And there's Molly. She's
Good morning.
Good morning.
Evening, afternoon, whatever it is. Yay.
I got a friend.
Yes, I got a friend, and I have a particular friend who's the guest. It's always so nice to see that works out.
I know.
Hi,
I
Michael.
know. I was going to wait till the very last minute, and then I thought, oh no, the torture's exquisite, but I mustn't.
Just don't. Thank you. Thank you. Well, welcome everybody. Yahoo! We'll just give it another minute to the top of the hour.
It doesn't reach through well, that's all.
Eileen, it's lovely to see you. How fun. And Donna, Yahoo! Josie, Tanya.
Uh-huh.
Very cool. Hi, Donna. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Well, it's the top of the hour. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Molly Gordon. A lot of you know me, and a lot of you probably don't. I imagine that virtually all of you know my guest, Michael Neill. I'm thrilled to have Michael here. He's a best-selling author, a coach, and I kind of hate to say this, but a hell of a nice guy. Seriously, I've been following Michael's work for many, many years, and he's always struck me as incredibly smart and articulate, and those are attractive traits. But in the last 7-8 years, he's grounded that intelligence and ability to articulate and say things in speech and in writing in a very profound understanding of how life works. And it has just been a delight to learn and witness his process and to kind of dive in to the pool myself and invite other people into the pool. So, Michael, is there anything you would like to say by way of introducing yourself?
I'd love to have a good answer to that, Molly. I guess I'll introduce myself by saying it's very nice to see you. It's very nice to be introduced by somebody who knows me and not just my bio. And I'm looking forward to chatting about whatever we're going to chat about today.
Cool. Well, just to cover the bases, guys, there is a little more of Michael's formal bio on the page where you clicked a link to participate in this. There are links to all three of his 3 principles related books on that page at the bottom. And a link to his website. So I encourage you, if you don't know more about Michael, to follow those links to learn more, because there's lots to learn and lots to enjoy from learning. Wow, creating the impossible. One of the things, Michael, for me about this particular title is that it's part of what drew me and repelled me about your work prior to the 3 principles. And that's not really about you, but about my own relationship with creating things and success and possibility. And I was thinking about this, I think last night over the dishes, and I thought I used to oscillate, and I think many people do, between magical thinking and grinding it out. My understanding of possibility and success would be sometimes 95% about show up, do it. And other times it'd be 95% about wishful thinking and wait for the magic. And I realized as I was reflecting about that in the last few years, and I think this is captured in your book, Creating the Impossible. Okay, let's get that muted. Hold on, guys. Okay. Hold on a second, and I'll manage some things here. There we go. There's one.
Access code accepted. Recording has started.
Interesting.
Have a lot to do with teaching people.
It sounds like me, but it's not me in the here and now. How interesting. It might not be me. But anyway, that oscillation, I realized, is no longer going on for me. There's a fundamentally different understanding about creating and stepping into impossibility. and I'm finding it thrilling. I'm not only reading Michael's book, but I've signed up for his Creating the Impossible 2018 course. And in the first 11 days, it's blown my mind, and I knew I would learn something. Otherwise, I wouldn't have signed up. But I had no idea, Michael, how much I would learn. So way to go, you.
Yay, me. No, I love this program. I've been developing it since 2009. So we've been doing it long enough to learn a lot from what seems to help people and what seems not to. But the oscillation's interesting because I think that has been my journey the whole time. Not so much for me between working hard and magical thinking, but between I gotta get somewhere and there's nowhere to get.
Yeah.
And because my version of I gotta get somewhere was such hard work, so much adrenaline, so stressful, there's nowhere to get sounded nicer. Right? But I was treating it like an either or.
Right.
Like only one of them could be true.
Yes.
But actually, there can be nowhere I have to get, and I can really want to go somewhere. Those two things aren't even paradoxical. They just sound paradoxical.
Yeah.
It's like, I think I'll go. I think I'll go to the movies. Why? Are you unhappy? No, I just fancy going to the movies. I think I'm going to create $1 million. Why? Are you insecure? No, I just fancy creating $1 million. Right? There's no inherent neurosis or neediness or ego in creating. It's just that because there so often is, we think they're inherently there.
Yeah. And in what was I used to oscillate so much with, and doubtless have not lost my capacity to oscillate. I just want to, when you catch me oscillating, folks, don't be surprised.
If it helps, Molly, I'm a big oscillating fan.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a clever thing to do. This realization that tapping into the infinite potential of the creative life force does not, you don't have to.
What happened, Keith?
Whoops.
Keith?
Hold on. Dominic, could you mute yourself?
He's here now. He's drilling.
Whoops. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to get to all of these. Oh, dear. Well, I'm not going to.
Can you not click? Oh, there he is. He's gone.
There it is. It wasn't showing up for a while in my dashboard. So, well,
You're thrown, aren't you?
That I am thrown. I am totally thrown. And
yes, I haven't seen you thrown. I don't think.
Really?
Yeah.
We're just not hanging out nearly enough.
Well, that could be.
It's not uncommon. It was about realizing that I have a new appreciation that collaborating, I'm hesitating because I don't even know how to talk about this infinite creative force, capacity of mind, potential of life, that stepping out of what I see as possible through the limits of my own effort, even my own extraordinarily and well-supported efforts, and deliberately going beyond what looks possible has just invited this deeper, bigger, cooler, groovier awareness that anything can happen. And that doesn't mean I don't show up every day and see what I can help make happen. It's just cool, Michael, and I really am stumbling. Obviously, my mind has truly been blown with this book and this program, and I'm just in the midst of experiencing my relationship with creating differently. And it's not my first creating rodeo, so I'm kind of going, whoa.
What I love about it, when you were talking, I was thinking about, I happened to be doing an Anthony Robbins certification seminar in like 1989, 90, when he was finishing Awaken the Giant Within. And I remember that phrase to me always was like, yes, I am going to awaken the giant within. I shall become Super Michael. And that was my image of what that was. And of course, we do have untapped reserves of will. We do have an extraordinary amount of personal power that we can tap into. But it's like a mouse learning to bench press when it has an elephant on its side, right? Our personal power is so teeny compared to the already pre-existing creative intelligence of life that to spend too much time bench pressing as a mouse, unless you love bench pressing, which is great, it really isn't the way that we're designed to work.
Yeah.
And I suddenly came to love the phrase again, awaken the giant within. But as I talk about in the book, the invisible giant, it isn't you in the sense that you think. It's not your ego. It's not your personality that you've got to awaken. It's not your will. It is that deeper part of us that is part of the divine unfolding. And when we know that, our relationship to it becomes like a surfer's relationship to the ocean. The surfer knows he or she can't make the waves come, can't decide how big the waves are going to be, but also absolutely knows that if you hang out where the waves are, there's a pretty good chance you're going to learn how to surf.
Yeah. Beautiful. So you first did Creating the Impossible, and I actually might have been. I think I participated in an early iteration of the program. And obviously, I can't even remember it. This time, I promise you, I'm going to remember that I did, because it's already in 10 days had a massive impact. And again, just to be clear, that doesn't say anything about Michael's iteration of the program, but wherever I was then, I wasn't getting it. What are some of the things that have changed for you, Michael, or how are you seeing Creating the Impossible differently today in 2018 than you did in 2009?
There are a lot of ways, I'm sure. But the ones I'm conscious of, particularly conscious of, are I used to think there were two parts to it. I used to think one part was about getting out of your own way, and the other part was about getting yourself to engage, like getting yourself to do stuff, right? So there was, you needed a what do you call the thing in the jungle that you swing? A scythe. You needed a scythe to clear the path, and then you needed a motor to move you forward. And what it is so apparent to me now is that actually we're all already on the travelator. We're all already being carried forward. And that really the only thing is we take ourselves off. We take ourselves out of the game. That's really it. All the motive you need, all the energy you need, all the creative impulse you need is already there. None of that needs to be found, added, or have anything done to it. It's simply about aiming yourself and it like a hose in the direction that you want the water to go, and then not stepping on it.
Yeah.
It's really remarkable if you can not step on it for like 3 days. I was talking to my son last night because he loves this. He was one of the first people to read the book, and he works for the city of Eugene, Oregon, designing events. And he's just created an impossible event. They're going to try and put on a coffin race for next Halloween in the city.
Okay.
And it is the most elaborate, insane, cool project. And he was telling me about, he said, yeah, so I have no idea how to do this. But I was talking to somebody about it, and they said they'd like to get involved. And so then the two of us were walking to go have coffee to talk about it, and said, oh, we should stop into this bike shop. And Oliver's like, no, I want to talk about the project. He said, just come into the bike shop. And we mentioned it to the guy in the bike shop, and he's going to sponsor it and help the people build their coffin cars and that's it. Once you step onto the elevator, things unfold that you couldn't have planned. And yet we think we need to see a path from A to B in order to set out on the journey.
Hmm.
And that's why most of the time we never set out on the journey, because the path doesn't reveal itself till you're on it.
I had an interesting experience, I think, of that yesterday. In Michael's program and in the book, the first part of the book lays out some key principles of creating, and then the second part of the book is this 90-day step-by-step process, for lack of a more accurate term, for creating. And yesterday, I think it was yesterday, was about speaking it into possibility, which could look like the old-fashioned figure out where you are, figure out where you want to be, and start mapping the steps in between. In one way, there was nothing new about it. And yet, for me, it was profoundly new when I attempted it without stepping on the hose. Because most of the day, and I'm loving that metaphor, most of the day I thought I was trying to think about what needed to happen. And from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, the main thing that needed to happen in my project remained the same. That didn't change. But for most of the day, I stepped on the hose when I started to think about it. And finally, at the end of the day, I sat down and just started to write without thinking about whether or not it would make sense or whether or not the steps would unfold. Or I guess I got my foot off the hose. And suddenly it was valuable.
And this is the thing. It's not like we're deliberately, knowingly, usually putting our foot on the hose. And it's also, it is going to slip off the hose anyways at some point. So, one of the things I talk incessantly about is staying in the game. There are 3 ways to fail. You don't start. Guaranteed you'll fail. You stop before you create what you want. Well, yes, that would be the second way. Or third, very occasionally with a very small number of goals, you run out of time. But most of the time, you made up the time.
Yeah.
So even that's not a real one. And the problem is we're used to listening to our thinking. We're used to thinking of creation as a reasonable, rational process. Creation is a voluntary, temporary insanity. It is a stepping out of the personal mind and the intellect long enough for this unpredictable, amazing energy to fill us up and use us as a vehicle for creation.
Yeah.
That's all.
When I was 18 years old, I moved to Seattle. And I moved to Seattle alone, without a job, in the midst of the Boeing recession, when the billboard said, "Would the last person to leave Seattle turn out the light?" And the Chamber of Commerce wrote me back when I said, "I'm thinking of moving about Seattle." They said, just don't. So I did, because I was 18 and I had 700 ducks. And in 1972, that seemed like a fortune. And a few months after moving here, what drew me was mountains and ocean. I thought, it's a city with mountains and ocean. Okay, I'm in. As soon as summer rolled around, I decided to go to the ocean. I didn't have a car. I didn't actually know where the ocean was. I had discovered that Puget Sound and the ocean weren't quite the same. So one summer morning, I walked out of my apartment to go to the ocean. I had a sleeping bag, and I figured there are buses. There are ways to get to the ocean. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to go to the ocean today. I walked down to the corner tavern, and in the back in the kitchen, some of us used to get together for coffee in the morning. So I walked in and got coffee, and I said, "I'm going to the ocean." And the other folks at the counter said, "Well, cool, we're going too." And that was my ride to the ocean. I could feel the hose that morning.
Yeah.
And I was aware that it might have worked out differently, but I was also aware that there was something about walking out to go to the ocean that got me to the ocean. I would not have gotten there if I hadn't left my apartment to go.
Well, and one of the things we really notice on the program, particularly because the feedback is so immediate, is that you see people talking about what they want to create, and they're so alive, right? There's the light is on, and then they start talking about how, and you see the light slowly dim, go off, the door shut, the person walk back home. It's like, now, the soul has left the building.
Yeah.
And the reason for that, I think, is because we don't realize that the how is an emergent property. The how doesn't exist before you're in the game. You can't see from the sidelines what you will see on the field.
Mm-hmm.
They're all metaphors. But when you start to in some ways, one of my absolute favorite bits of the book is the epilogue, which came about. I was looking for a way to finish the book, and I had 3 people call me in short succession. One who was a rapper trying to actually make it in Seattle. One was a student, wanted to end racism. And one was a very successful recording artist who wanted to kind of know how to sell 1 million records in today's, non-record business. And what was interesting was they were the answer. They were my walking into the shop and everyone saying, hey, we're going to the ocean too. Because they all presented the same thing that everybody is. Yeah, but how? And when I pointed to each of them that they really can't know how it's so weird when you occasionally know how ahead of time. Like every now and again, lightning illuminates the sky and you can see the whole thing. But almost all the time you're driving with headlights and you can see about 10 feet ahead. But I think it's E.L. Doctorow has the wonderful quote, writing a novel is like driving a car cross country with the headlights on.
Yes.
You can only see 10 feet ahead, but that's far enough.
Yeah. There are 2 questions that I think are very closely related. One from David and Donna. What's up with humans not knowing what we want and which way to point the hose? Why is that such a challenge? And Pat, what if you don't know or have a path to get onto?
So, I'd love to address them. If that's okay.
Go for it.
Well, so the first one, the why are humans is the bit that's stuck in my head. But, are so bad at knowing
Why
what
are
we
humans?
Why are humans? No, was it why are humans so bad at knowing what they want?
No, I think, and Donna, if you want to clarify this, feel free to unmute yourself and do so, because sometimes the chat version is not quite it. It says, what's up with we humans?
Hey, Donna. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, the language I used is what's up with us, just trying to be a little open-ended in this kind of reoccurring human phenomena that we get so confused with the how is one of the reasons I think is what's up with us, that we don't point the hose. But there seems to be an innate, especially for the modern Western human mind, an innate complexity that we don't clarify what we say we want.
Well, see,
so we don't know where to point the
sure.
hose.
So I'm gonna describe that same phenomenon in different words, or I'm going to explain it in a different way, because I think it's something we all recognize, being like, oh, I don't know, sort of,
That's
that's just a function of too much noise in head, right? I sometimes call that the universal human illness. We try to function with so much going on in our heads that we can't see straight, we can't think straight, we can't hear ourselves think. That's why activities like journaling and meditation and talk therapies can be helpful, because it does it. But if we don't understand that the mind is designed to work more like a radio receiver than a broadcasting machine, like if you let it, ideas will come to you, things will occur to you. But you got to give it 37 seconds, right? The number of times somebody goes, I don't know what to do. I say, oh, have you thought about it? Oh, yeah. Well, think about it again now. No, still nothing. No, give it 37 seconds. And I swear to God, I don't think I've ever had somebody get to 37 seconds and not have an idea. It takes that little, but it does take that. So I think that is part of it. We misunderstand how to use the mind, how the mind works.
And I find that's true, especially as a coach, working with people, getting them into contemplative practices, clarifying, spending time with that. And then the mind, the ego, the small mind says, but you'll never have that. So I won't even point the hose. I know where I want to point it, but I won't do it.
So part of the fun for me of the game of coaching and the game of creating the impossible is it's actually about getting people beyond their psychology, not getting them to fix it. So we've all got our crazy, like we've all got our version. One of the questions I asked on the very first day of the program this year, and it's a question I've been asking my clients for years at the beginning of our work together, is how will your insecurity manifest itself during our time together? Right? And everyone can answer that question. They know, oh, I'll quit because of this, or I'll get really angry at you because you're making me do this stuff. And it's hysterical. We know it so well. But the beauty of that is we then don't have to fall for it. Like I am, and people don't believe this about me, and in fairness, it has changed a bit in the last few years, but I am one of the most pessimistic thinkers I know. I think everything I touch is going to turn to shit. I just am convinced that if I'm involved, the flower is going to die, right? But I also think I'm full of shit. Like I have no respect for my own opinion or ability to predict the future. So it doesn't really hold me back. I don't think of that voice as a trusted advisor. I think of that voice as Bob, the homeless guy who lives in my head. Right? So it's there. It's absolutely telling me shit about why I can't and why it's impossible and who do I think I am. But then it talks about little men from Mars and the television talking to it. I mean, it's having a hard time up there. And there is another part of us, a deeper part of us, a truer self, you could even call it, the creative intelligence of life, that when we stop paying so much attention to Bob, it fills us up, it guides us, it becomes obvious what to do. And so it's not so much you've got to quiet that voice, as if you see it for what it is, you just won't pay as much attention to it. And then it does seem to get quieter.
I think the operative there was see it for what it is, which goes back to the principles and the belief system, the truth.
Yeah, I mean that's it. There's really nothing I found that works better than the truth.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
And then, Pat, I don't know if this is the same question or a little different take on it. What if you don't know or have a path to get onto?
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that is a little bit different because I think that is a misunderstanding of paths. So my first book for Hay House was, when I submitted it, called Soul Path, which they thought was too new age sounding, which I thought was hysterical.
Pretty funny. Yeah.
The Dolphin and Angel people thought Soul Path was too out there as a title. But they changed the title and published it anyways. But the reason I called it Soul Path is because what I had seen in the first sort of 15 years of working with high performing clients is the people that I would call happily successful. So there were people who had worldly success, but they really were assholes. I mean, they killed themselves to do it. The ones who were happily successful, life seemed to unfold for them as if by design. It was almost like their soul was laying out the path one brick at a time in real time. So I had the chance to have dinner with Bob Hurley, the guy who created Hurley International, which was the largest leisure wear line, and then he sold it to Nike for hundreds of millions of dollars. And lovely guy. It was he and his son took me and my son to dinner, and we were chatting. And my son asked him, Bob, how did you go from being like a surfer dude, because he is still kind of a surfer dude, to the head of this, multi-$100 million company? And Bob just kind of shrugged his shoulders and says, I don't know, man. I'm like Mr. Magoo. I just keep walking and somehow everything works out. And I'm good at math. Like that was it. He kind of was willing to just take the next step and take the next step. And if you don't remember the Mr. Magoo cartoons, I'm sure you can find them on YouTube. But he's the almost blind guy who just wanders off a building, and instead of falling, he does it just as a crane is swinging into place, and then he walks across the crane onto another building, and he never notices all the ways that the universe is supporting him. Well, we're all Mr. Magoo. It's just that if we start to notice all the ways the universe is supporting us, it's less scary and it's more fun.
Yeah.
And in business, it's good to have at least somebody who's good at math.
So Pat, if that doesn't completely answer your question, or if you have a follow-up, feel free to either unmute yourself or follow up in the chat. And I muted people for the sake of the recording and our ability to hear, but that doesn't, I want you, and we welcome you to ask questions and share observations. You can do that in the chat. You can also just unmute yourself, turn on your video, and interrupt. I think we could survive that.
Could I answer?
Of course, Pat.
I'm sorry, the video's not on because I've got a bit of a flu and I'm in pajamas, dressing gown, and a hot water bottle, so I'm not a pretty sight if you don't mind.
You painted a regal picture.
Well, I'm hiding. What did you say, Michael? Did you say that that's Pat's misunderstanding that there isn't a path? Did I hear you? Sorry, or did I?
Well, it's. I mean, you can own it if you want. I meant it as a cultural misunderstanding.
Right. Yeah.
That
Okay.
the idea is the path is already there, and we just have to find it. Whereas the reality is the path doesn't exist until you start walking it. And that's why I like the metaphor of creating a little more than the metaphor of a journey from here to there. Is because when we create, we always create from nothing. We always create from a blank page. So we know there isn't a path. When we look back, it might look like there was a sequence that we could call a path, but the path appeared as we walked it. And
You see,
that's just a more accurate metaphor in my experience.
I get that. I feel what you're saying. But as in regards my life at the moment, it's pretty nice. I've come across the principles. My life has changed. My family's lives have changed just through that understanding. So I can see it working in our family situations. However, for me at my time in life, I actually don't know what to do with myself. There isn't problems, but I would like to do something, but there isn't. I get that you need to be. I get what you're saying, that you need to be on the path for it to be revealed. But I know that maybe you're saying there's nothing to do, but there isn't at the moment anything that's interesting me, and yet I've got a lot of time on my hands. That's what I mean. I don't know.
Well, so here's my observation.
Okay.
Human beings really like being creatively engaged. We do really well when we're engaged with life, and we don't do so well when we cut ourselves off from it. But engaging with life is kind of an inside-out job, not an outside-in job. So we think of engaging with life as finding something to throw ourselves into, and that often does something for us. But what it does for us is it gets our attention off of us, out of our head, and back into the feeling of being alive and the unfolding of being alive. And creative impulses and ideas come from that. So in a way, to be creatively engaged with life is to be creatively engaged with the aliveness inside us. When we engage with that stuff just starts showing up. Because people always say, when I talk about the sort of, there's nowhere for us to get to and our well-being is innate and things like this. Well, if that were true and I was just content, I would spend all my time sitting on my porch. And I'm like, no, that's depression. People who are alive and awake to themselves will really enjoy being on the porch when they're on the porch, and then they'll really enjoy going out and doing something else.
I get you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
I experienced what I kind of called to myself a motivation gap for actually a number of years that I now see partly as one way I interpret it is I just needed a long time to unwind the pressure valve.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't regret a moment of the Netflix watching that I did while I allowed that to unwind. And I also see, though, there was another way to understand it is I was thinking that what to do would have a particular kind of vibe or signature. It would be important, meaningful, significant, money-making.
You sound like a millennial.
Yeah. And what I noticed over time is when I would, in my mind, really start running out of money, I would come up with something to make some money. Might not have been enough money to impress anybody else, but it kept me afloat. And when at some point I would clean the cat box. At some point I'd clean the house. At some point I'd do laundry. At some point I would go for a run. So I was always, things were doing. And I finally stopped. I think two things happened. The pressure level finally settled enough that I could notice what appealed without giving the fact that it appealed a lot of significance. And I started to volunteer for stuff. And at this point, 3 years later, none of the things I volunteered for seem to be mapping to what is unfolding as my work and the things I'm creating in the world. And I'm having to make choices about where I put my time. But it certainly got me in the flow of life again. And as I got in the flow of showing up for life again, my commentary, the crawl about what I was up to, if I was up to the right thing, what it meant to be motivated, kind of became less intrusive. And it was easier to notice what I might want to do. Tanya, what would you like? Your hands are up. Go for it.
Hi, Molly.
Hi.
Hi, Michael.
Yeah.
Can I have like a 3-minute laser coaching session with you over this?
Let's do it.
It's the same question, really. So, at the 2.5 years ago, I had the transformation when I discovered this. I met you in the speaker's room at the UK conference.
Okay.
We're looking nervous. And I was hiding from people who wanted to ask me questions. And a couple of weeks after that, one of the first people I met on this was Steph Chivichovsky.
Mm-hmm.
You know Steph, yeah?
I know Steph very well.
Yeah. And I asked him, I really want to do something with this, but I don't know what. And every time I think about it, I get panicked. And he gave me a fantastic response, as he would have. And I was absolutely fine with that. And I noticed over the next year that every time I had the same thought, it was with Bob the homeless guy started coming in and giving all this negativity, until one day it just wasn't there. And I went, right, it's happening. I'd kind of already stepped into it almost, and people were coming to me. So I went, and I'm now doing an apprenticeship with Jacqueline Hollows. Mm-hmm. And also I am being mentored a year program with Elaine Helides, both of whom are on your course. And
just to put the pressure on you. Yeah.
Every time I have looked at your course over the years, I've gone, oh, I'm not ready for that. And now I feel like I'm being dragged into it, and I'm scared again. Bob set up shop again. Oh, I'll never be good. I won't be able to do it. What about funding? All that stuff.
So what? And only because you kind of set this up as a laser coaching session. What's the question? What would you like me to address? Because basically what you just said is, oh my God, my life is amazing, and I'm a little uncomfortable when I think about this.
Oh, it goes right back to how uncomfortable I am with feeling uncomfortable and wanting it to be different.
one of the biggest differences between at least in my experience, this understanding and everything else I've done, and I've done everything I could get my hands on for 30 years, right? Yeah. Is it really isn't about making yourself more comfortable. It's about getting really comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so it isn't about trying to control our experience better. It's about getting a different relationship with our experience that means we can surf our experience. We don't have to change it. We can sail across our experience. We can let our experience carry us without drowning in it. And that one shift, just away from trying to control your psychology or control your experience by controlling the world, if all you do is give up, abandon hope on that one, because we're not made to do it, all of a sudden, all the energy, all the creative ideas, all the fuck it, let's just do it, all of that just pops up by itself. It's built into us. And we're just so used to connecting how we feel and what we do. There is no inherent connection between them. I've seen, in fact, last night we were talking to my godson, it's his birthday today, about when he was left with his grandparents for the first time and they came home and he was sitting in an overflowing nappy of diarrhea, happily playing. And it's like, it isn't circumstances. It never has been. But we're so used to making it circumstantial that we're continually looking for better circumstances so we can have a better experience. And it just doesn't work.
Is that kind of like feel the fear but do it anyway? Just
well,
keep going. Just notice that.
In the context of creating, it's feel whatever the hell you're feeling and do it anyway. Feel the joy and do it anyway. Feel the insecurity and do it anyway. Feel the confidence and do it anyway. Feel the confusion and do it anyway. It's so irrelevant to whether or not. It's like saying, I can only do this if there are no people wearing red shirts in the room. We would go, what the hell does that have to do with it? Well, I can only do it if I don't feel fear. Well, what the hell does that have to do with it? It's just a feeling in the body and it comes and goes with thought.
Yep. Oh, I must forget that about 4 times a week.
Yeah, but that suggests you're remembering it 5.
Yeah, it does. I definitely do remember it 5. I used to forget it.
Yeah, and I credit Linda Pransky with this saying, but I always love the saying that, it's easier to get back up on a horse than to not fall off one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you, Tanya. Kathy, what's up?
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Michael. Oh my gosh. Hi. This is so great. I'm new to the 3 principles. I met Molly in mid-October, and my life has transformed like 100%. I'm madly in love with this new way of experiencing being human. Your program is a delight. I have been playing with the experience of creation as a way to, I don't want to say like improve my mood, but I had the flu and I noticed I had a choice. I could either grumble or I could get involved in something that interests me. And getting involved in something interests me, and I stopped grumbling. I've recently noticed that all of my projects start with I. And as I was working through what to create, I, me, and it just didn't feel good. And I have reached a space where I have kind of changed that direction. because while it's about me, what it really is about for me is to create something that others can enjoy. Like the act of creating it and sharing it is really where my joy will come from right now. And I just wondered if you might talk a little bit about that distinction to kind of help me maybe see more of it, see it more clearly. And what I've hit upon, I went through 10 different projects. The one I've hit upon is I really want to share what I'm seeing with the people in my community. I would like to help people get out of the pain of their own created prisons. And what sounds like fun for me is to create a program, a course, and I'd like to have 1,000 graduates. And that has kind of settled, and it feels better to me than I would like to make $100,000 from X, Y, and Z. Another impossible project, that's my dog. Another impossible project that just lights me up is I would like to be a faculty on Super Coach Academy. And I can feel that just, I have no idea what that looks like, right? But I can feel that all of the other things I want to do sort of seem to be aligned in that direction. So I've just said a whole bunch of nonsense, and I hope that you heard something in it.
Well, you just shared some things that you're lit up about, and I'll tell you the piece of it that I think might be most helpful for me to speak to. And I'm wary of sounding pedantic or like the word police. And that's not, so if you hear that, that's an error on my part. Joy is what wells up in us when we're not sitting on top of it. Right? That aliveness, that wonderful feeling, that twinkle you've had in your eye when you were talking. Right? That's what it feels like to be alive when we're not stepping on the hose. We can pour that into anything and it will become more joyful and it will become more beautiful and we will fall more in love with it. It looks like it's this project is lighting me up, but it's just for whatever reason in certain projects we allow ourselves to be lit, and in others we have reasons that we sit on it. I'm not saying conscious reasons or you've got to figure out yourself. I'm just saying the only reason we aren't in love with everything is because we've got some thinking about something.
Oh, so, okay, I have worked at a corporate job for 6 years. It is a good job. I selected the job. I was fortunate enough to get it, and I hate it. Right? I hate it. I hate it. Every day I hate it. And yesterday, the flu, so I had a little break. Yesterday I went to work, and this fresh thought just kind of gently kept flowing through my mind. I love blank, the name of my corporation. I love blank. And it's true. And it's true. It was so bizarre. I've never thought that before. And I showed up, and it was, there were still very annoying things, but I love blank. And it's so amazing how things are starting to shift for me.
I wrote a story in my first book about a client I had who was a fairly well-known film critic, but he wanted to write screenplays. And he started to complain more and more about how much he hated his job. And one day I just stopped him and said, dude, you don't hate your job. In fact, you love your job more than anyone I know. And he kind of looked kind of, and he went, yeah, but I'm afraid that if I let myself continue to love it, I'll never write the screenplay. And it reminded me of this quote from a guy named Bruce DeMarsico, that human beings are the only animals that shit in their own nests to get themselves to move out. Mm-hmm. We can leave for the fun of it. We could go do something different when everything is perfect where we are. That's not self-sabotage or an upper limits problem. That's part of the joy and fluidity of life. And allowing yourself to love your job doesn't mean you'll stay there forever. It just means you'll love it while you're there.
Thank you so much. I am just thrilled to meet you and this entire community, everyone. Thank you.
Oh, well, nice to meet you. You're muted, Molly.
Thank you, Michael. Is it still possible to join Creating the Impossible 2018?
Yeah, I think we usually cut it off in like the 4th week, because after that point it gets a little silly. But yeah, just go to michaelneill.org/CTI.
Okay.
Join right there.
Great. I'll put that link in the chat too. And Anne K, you had a question.
Yes, I'm here.
Hello.
Hi, I'm almost 77. I've had a great life. I have everything. I'm just not enjoying it as much as I want to, and I really don't know. I've joined all kinds of groups, and I've been coached, and I have one happy day and many less of the others. I've got a little internal thing, my hand, that kind of leads me to source, and it actually brought me back to holding myself in love the other day. So I feel pretty good about life, except I feel directionless. I don't, you said step on the path, but one of my coaches just says, you've achieved it all, just enjoy yourself, and there's really nothing you have to do. So, I'm kind of, what would you say, waffling?
Well, so there's two things that occur to me, Dan, and they may not turn out to be deep in relation to your situation, because obviously we've known each other for 17 seconds, but let me share what came to mind.
Yes.
I think what throws people is the metaphor of a path, because it suggests, A, like I said earlier, that it already exists, or B, that there's somewhere to get. The reason I keep going back to the metaphor of creating is every day is created from nothing.
Yeah, there is no place to get. I get that.
So what might be fun for you, there's an exercise in the book and in the program where I ask people in the program just for a week, but people do it forever, to create something from nothing every day. So that at the end of the day, something exists in form in the world that did not exist at the beginning of the day. Now, this can be a paper-clip sculpture. This can be a beautiful meal. This can be a drawing or a poem. This can be a photograph. This can be a beautiful lunch with friends. This can be anything. If you want, we've got an open Facebook group anyone can join called A Year of Creating the Impossible, #daily-creation. And there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who are just creating something every day. There's no path. They're not creating things in order to. They're creating things to kind of awaken that flow of the creative energy in them.
Just like your joy of it, huh?
Yeah, and my guess is something like that, which is inherently and intentionally directionless, might actually be far more enlivening and interesting and awakening for you than trying to find a path.
Yeah, because I've joined like the Year of Miracles, and my intention for the year is to be inexplicable, undescribable, ever-expanding joy. And, that's my theme. And then out of that came the hand and arms of love, and maybe I am love. And but I used to be an artist. I used to paint, but I don't have a desire to do a lot of the creative things I used to. But some days I do enjoy creating cooking, and so just find something totally.
And I'm even saying, do it for a week. Just do it deliberately for a week and see what that wakes up in you.
Okay, yeah, I need to, because I have one day where I'm just totally connected and I'm at one with Source and I'm happy as can be, and then I can't go to sleep at night because my mind's chattering away. And then the next day I wake up and it's kind of like, ho-hum.
Well, and some of that is being a human with a mind at things, right? So I'm not suggesting that there's some magical place that we get to where our heads don't fill up with noise and we don't get bogged down. But it doesn't have to be a sticking point. It can just be the feeling of one little part of the river throughout the day.
Yeah, because that when I first came up with that theme, I was happy as could be for a whole week, and just by saying it, I'd be happy. And then I lost it by just saying it, and then I got this hand, and the hand really feels.
Yeah. So, Anne, just because also we're coming to the end, but don't worry about how you get there.
Okay, maybe that's my problem.
In a way, that's you keep the hose aimed almost at itself.
Okay.
And that stops anything from flowing. If you aim the hose outwards, then the water can flow.
Okay, so by jumping into a bunch of things, looking for it is actually
Well,
stuff.
and just experiment, just play and see. You know, and you're welcome to come back to me and go, well, that was a stupid idea, and we'll play with something else.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Anne.
Doing your work.
Thank you
I
very
put the
much.
link to the Facebook group, the open Facebook group, in the chat. I also put a link to the Creating the Impossible program in the chat. We have about 6 minutes, but who's counting? I've got one person with a question, and I want to give Michael an opportunity to choose how he'd like to spend these last 6 minutes. If there's something particular you want to share, if you'd like to take a question.
Let's take the question, and
Great.
We'll see where it goes.
Sue, that's you.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Sorry, Molly, I thought you were going to do it. I was sitting back waiting for you to unmute me.
I'm usually so fast, but.
I'm not going to say a question. I'm just going to say a couple of things because I'm mindful of the time. I started reading CTI yesterday, and at the end of the first chapter, it's like, don't read anymore, make something that hasn't existed before. So I made this while we were talking. I painted a rock. So this did not exist until just now. And I really love that, and I would be in the program if I could. But my thing I'm noticing, the insight, the little insight right now is I don't know which horse. I don't know which horse. The first chapter of the book said, oh, make $1 million, a new loving relationship, or write the book. And it's like, yes, yes, yes. And then I'm sitting here this morning, and I've had a interesting, dramatic health month. My first 2 ever ambulance rides, sometimes in the ER. I'm going to have a monitor for heart rhythms put on tomorrow. And so I don't know if my next big project is being graceful for my imminent death, or if I'm going to live a long time. And is it the book? Is it the line of products? Where do I put my energy? And I've stopped myself for all kinds of reasons from starting on many things in the past. And now it's like, well, maybe it's my death and so
Can you feel just how much shouting Bob is doing in your head?
Oh my God, of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then there are these moments of, it doesn't matter. I'm just, taking this beating heart of mine with its fullness into whatever it is that I.
So that's right there. That is the key, Sue, is that you actually have that within you, which can discern between you're crazy, right? And I use that word very loosely, folks. Between that part of your psychology and that wisdom inside you, that knowing inside you that it's not a big deal. You don't have to do it all in one go, and you can just paint a rock. Right? That discernment, that what I would call consciousness, that wisdom inside you is all you need. That will guide you every step of the way, regardless of what way we later discover that it was.
I've lived a long time, and I've stopped myself so many times, and the regret is not a great place to hang out either. And by the way, Molly can vouch for just how crazy I am. So Michael, no offense taken, but yeah, I'm mindful.
But Sue, you're missing that I can also vouch for just how incredibly sane you are.
Thanks, Molly. Yes, I'm a little more comfortable with the "what's wrong with me" side. I'm sure nobody else can relate.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A pleasure. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
You too.
I mean, I guess my final thought, Molly, assuming you want a final thought from me, is that for me, one of the great joys in my life when I was younger was creating. And then I had to make it in life. And then people taught me how to create. And then it became a serious thing. And then I had to get good at it. And then I had to, and then I got so fed up with it that I went the other way and just cut it off.
Yeah.
I'm not going to create. I'm just going to live. I'm just going to be. And that felt better. But it also, over time, became more and more of an active suppression of this creative drive, of this creative impulse that is life wanting to express through us. And so for me, the joy in creating the impossible in your own life isn't about the impossible. It's about opening yourself back up to life, letting yourself be used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one, having fun, learning heaps, and creating cool shit in the world.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, it is a marvelous book, a marvelous program, an engrossing and engaging way to dive into life and into a deeper experience and engagement with the three principles, which is behind and under it. And I'm just phenomenally grateful to you, Michael, for having configured it, created it. Thank you, Eileen, for holding up the book. And there's heaps to learn here, and to learn in a very expansive and open, wondering way. So, yeah. Thank you, everyone, for taking time to be here. Yeah, I'll post the replay, and I'll also post a link to the chat with all the links on the event page. Bye, guys. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.